manufacturing and make it on the bring it on the mainstream.
All right, Sahil Saab, thank you so much for your input, sir. And Farhan Saab, was a pleasure having you, sir. Thank you so much for your participation. Wish we had more time, but unfortunately I'm totally running out of time now. And thank you so much, Sadasha, for your presence as well. And that's all we have for this time. I'll see you inshallah on Monday. Till then, you take good care of yourself. Have a great weekend. Khuda Hafiz.
Ayubia National Park, a wonderland of sky-touching trees, beautiful birds, and a wide variety of animals. Ayubia was declared a national park in 1984. It covers an area of 33 square kilometres. This park is full of flora and fauna. The Forest Park is home to 31 species of mammals, including the common leopard, rhesus monkey, yellow-throated marten and Indian porcupine. Around 203 bird species can be found in the park. The park's biodiversity includes 757 plant species. "19 species of reptiles, and 650 species of insects. Ayubia National Park has a network of natural springs and freshwater streams, which besides adding to the scenic beauty, are important sources of water for the local communities. This park is a haven for the adventure-seeking tourist and nature lover. Various trails snake through the forest, which are ideal for hikers and bird watchers. In order to preserve this unique natural heritage, visitors are requested to follow the park rules. Do not litter. Littering destroys the beauty of the park and harms the fragile ecosystem. The garbage you leave behind ends up in streams and pollutes the water used by thousands of people in downhill areas. Do not uproot plants or trees. Do not kill or trap animals. Do not vandalize park property. Do not light fires in the forest. Dry pine needles are quick to catch fire, which can spread easily and destroy vast areas of the forest cover. Do not feed the monkeys. Monkeys are wild animals, and although they may look cute, close human contact can be dangerous. Monkeys carry diseases which can be transmitted to humans. Feeding them only encourages them to move closer to human settlements. The forest is home to animals and birds that are disturbed by loud sounds. You are a guest in the forest, therefore please respect its residents. This forest is a treasure trove of natural wonders. By following the park rules, you can play your role in preserving the natural heritage of Pakistan. Book is life. Book is hope. And book is light for the future.
Good evening, Assalamu alaikum. You're watching PTV World. I'm Fahim Bangish with the headline news for this hour. Prime Minister Imran Khan said Pakistan suffered in the decade of darkness from 2008 to 2018, which cost the country foreign debt and degradation in all sectors. The government will table an amendment bill in the parliament to hold Senate elections through open ballot and allow dual nationals to contest parliamentary polls. President Arif Alvi confers Hilal-e-Imtiaz military upon chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff of Jordanian Armed Forces, Major General Yusuf Ahmed Al-Hanafi, in recognition of his efforts to further strengthen defense ties between Pakistan and Jordan. Pakistan once again urges the Indian government to ensure safety, security and protection of minorities, particularly Muslims and their places of worship, and fulfill its responsibilities under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and other international instruments of the United Nations. The Supreme Court upholds the Sindh High Court decision releasing the accused in the US journalist Daniel Pearl's murder case. Confrontation builds up at Delhi's UP border as farmers protesting against the contentious farm laws refuse state government's order to vacate the roads 2 days after deadly clashes rocked the Indian capital. South Africa 187 for 4 its stumps after Pakistan bowled out for 378 in their first innings on the third day of the first cricket test in Karachi. BTV Sports is televising the match live. That's all for now. Further details and live streaming, do log on to our website world.btv.com.pk. You can find us on our Facebook page with the name of BTV World and follow us on Twitter at WorldBTV. Thank you for joining us.
Politics is not everybody's cup of tea. In Pakistan, politics has endless possibilities. Politics is the art of the possible. But we have got you covered. Debate. For in-depth analysis. And insight. Watch Politics Today every Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday at 9:05 p.m. with me, Farooq Fatah.
Just like the billboard paintings performed in Pakistan, there is another indigenous form of art performed in Pakistan, and it is the truck art. With its all-colorful floral patterns, depiction of human heroes with creative aspects, ratios, calligraphy of poetic verse, and drivers' words of wisdom. This form of art is truly a part of Pakistani transport tradition. Many trucks and buses in Pakistan are highly customized and decorated by their owners. These adjourned vehicles are considered as moving art or jingle art. Because of their unique decor style, these vehicles are quite distinct in layers from other trucks around the world. Each part of the vehicle is decorated differently, with variations depending on the regional style. In Pakistan, a truck driver owner usually pays $3,000 to $5,000 for their vehicle's external decoration. The art embellishes such trucks according to the particular tastes of the driver. Nearly every city in Pakistan has a unique decor. The Balochistan and Peshawari trucks are heavily trimmed with wood. Rawalpindi and Islamabad trucks have permanently featured plastic work. Camel-borne ornamentation is commonly seen in trucks decorated by Sindh artists. These trucks are also representative of different local, historical and cultural regions of Pakistan. Thus, these trucks are also representative of different historical and cultural regions of Pakistan, the enchanting arts and crafts of Pakistan.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the government which is supposed to legislate on, it plans to legislate on the Senate procedures. With a view to that, a parliamentary meeting was held today. We'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking about the issue of corruption that of course has been very close to the government's heart. There has been so much debate on corruption and the way to tackle corruption, the accountability process, all of that. With a view to that, the Amnesty International report, the government's efforts to combat the corruption at this time. Why are the reports indicating what they are? How does the government propose to deal with that? All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Ahmed Jawad, who's Central Secretary Information PTI. Thank you for joining us today. Dr. Niaz Murtaza, who is a senior analyst. Thank you for joining us. We'll also be joined by Barrister Hasnain Ali Mirza, who's MPA with GDA. Before we move on, I'm going to go to Jawad Sahab. Jawad Sahab, of course the government, the parliamentary meeting was held today also. Let's get right to the crux of the issue. A lot is being said about the issue of corruption. Of course the Prime Minister has been talking about it not only just now after the government's come in, but before. It's been the glaring point in the manifesto of PTI. And today, the report that has come out seems to indicate that the figures are not glory-worthy. How do you see the situation?
Maru, first of all, Transparency International, I think universally accepted, credible institution. And all over the world, when we have to measure corruption in a country, obviously this universally accepted international institution is referred. So if we have come down with 4 points, first of all, we should not deny it. Yes, it is a fact. But now we need to also read the report, which explains there are 6 modules in this evaluation. Out of 6 modules, 4 modules, the same position has been maintained. There is no decline. Things have been maintained. In 2 modules, there is a slight decline, and which has overall affected the total points, and which brought us to 124 position. But besides this discussion, what actually the calculation has led us, more important is to understand that corruption is definitely not kind of a switch which can be just used and you can eliminate the corruption in 1 or 2 years. It has to be done systematically. In the same report of Transparency International, the efforts of NAB has also been appreciated.
But why do you think, Jawad Sahab, that Pakistan was in 2020 at, I understand, number 120, and now it's at 124? So things have definitely gone down as far as corruption is concerned. There is, according to the index, there is something that is perhaps not as great as one would like it to be.
That's what I said to start with this. That first of all, we should accept what is the outcome of this
but where do you
report.
think the problem lies?
But one more thing, Maruf, I would like to clarify that this is 2020 report, which is based on the data of 2019. Which is of course our government as well. It is 1 year past evaluation because they take time through the processes when the report is published. And when the last year report was published, that was 2019,
right? Okay.
And it carried the data of 2018, which was obviously not PTI except for the last few months. So first of all, we should accept the fact that this is the evaluation of 2019, which is the first year of PTI. And whatever the steps we have taken or whatever the management and the leadership roles have been selected for the institutions, the result of those changes, those strategy might reflect at least after 1 year. So it may not be available, may not be achieved in the first year. So it is 2020 report based on the last year, which is 2019 data.
But you don't think that, in terms of trends,
Yeah.
Do you think that the government will reflect on where perhaps it needs to work as far as
Yes.
issues are concerned?
Yes.
And of course there are issues as far as NAB is also concerned,
Yes.
according to this report.
According to this report, NAB's efforts has been appreciated.
Okay.
The recovery of 365 billion as claimed by NAB, that has also been appreciated. The anti-corruption department of Punjab has also recovered about 200 plus billion rupees.
Okay.
There are some results, and which might result into the ranking of 2021, which will be based on the data of the year 20, which is the past year. So
let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Dr. Niaz Murtaza ji. Niaz sir, how do you see the report and all that it brings to light with reference to corruption, particularly?
Yeah, well, first thing to recognize is that it doesn't directly measure corruption, because obviously corruption is hidden. So you can't go and, really measure it. What it does measure is people's perception about, corruption, whether that's gone up in the country or whether that's gone down. So then, keeping that in mind, there are two things, there is the rank. And then, there is the absolute score. So, what Jawad Saab was referring to was, that the rank has gone down by 4. But, rank can go down not necessarily because of any change in Pakistan, but even because of, changes in other countries. So, what it does mean is that, they have done better at reducing perceptions about corruption than Pakistan. So, if you look at, the actual absolute score, which is a more direct measure of, people's perception, that has gone down by 1. And previous year too, also it had gone down by 1. And even, the previous year's report, which was the 2019 report, it came out in January 2020. So some of, there are 8, different surveys which cover Pakistan. About 6 of them did relate to 2019. So, it's not so much of whether, absolute corruption has gone up or not, actual corruption. It's about, the perceptions. 2 years in a row under PTI, perceptions have slightly become worse. So, the biggest takeaway from me is not whether actual corruption has gone up or down. It's about, the failure of PTI to, create...
With regard to corruption, but also the way it translates for the government, because of course, one of the main, the mandate of the government, one of their main, I would say, points, even till today, what is always, the Prime Minister, and the fact that he refuses to give NRO, according to him, that is something that is reiterated, every 10 days or so. Does that mean, when you talk about perception, does that mean that the way people are now looking at that narrative has changed, perhaps for the worse?
Yeah, that's the issue. What I was saying that, PTI has failed to instill this confidence in people. There were some business people, other people, academicians, whoever was interviewed, that it's, that it will be able to, bring about a change, or it has brought about a change. So, that political angle is, I guess, the biggest takeaway, rather than going into whether corruption has gone down or not. So I think that's something it has to, review why it's, it's the biggest thing for PTI is corruption. Its whole narrative is that, the country is doing poorly because of the corruption of Nawaz Sharif and Zardari, and the biggest challenge for the government is to, do something about them, get them convicted, bring the looted money, but that still is not, really convincing people that, PTI is able or willing to, be really good at it. A part of it is also because there's also been, some scandals about PTI itself, sugar, this, that, KP, BRT. So that is the biggest thing. I think PTI really needs to review its strategy and not just...
Back to you. Niaz Sahab, let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Pastor Danish Iftikhar. Danish Sahab, how do you look at the situation today as in terms of perception? We're talking about the way that corruption, the issue of corruption was looked at, when the government came in, of course, and now. because we haven't seen, in terms of accountability, of course, the government remains steadfast till today that they will not compromise, again, I'm saying, on accountability, but we haven't really seen anybody being, so to speak, held up to the task. We haven't seen anybody being, so to speak, something proven, so to speak, which is what the opposition keeps talking about. They keep saying that, look, we have been investigated, we are still being investigated. If you look at Sharif's family, for example, but nothing has come out of it. Do you think that's part of the reason why the index shows what it does?
Well, I would like to say, at the outset when the PTI government came into power, the whole slogan that it raised and the basics of that government was that if a non-corrupt leader is at the top,
right, then
corruption will stop automatically. This was the whole premise of Imran Khan. He said that when the leaders will not be corrupt, when I will not be involved in corruption, corruption will, I will not allow corruption to take place under me. But I see that logic failing, very apologetically. I mean, the Transparency International, it has just released a report, and Pakistan has slipped 4 points. Now, Imran Khan does not have any opposition party stopping him from tackling this menace of corruption. I mean, he can say that, the policies were misguided and he was not able to, the policies were not in the right direction. But corruption as a menace, corruption as a threat, corruption in the public sector entities, which do not have anything to do with the opposition leaders or the opposition lawmakers or the former prime ministers. He had a free hand to tackle this. Unfortunately, it hasn't happened.
Right,
despite the fact that the recoveries of 300 billion rupees have been made by NAB and by the Public Accounts Committee, despite these huge numbers that are presented to us, unfortunately corruption hasn't, gone down.
Right, I will come back to you. Before I go to Jawad Saab with this, I'm going to go to Barrister Hasnain Ali Mirza. Barrister, we're talking about the issue of corruption, the fact that the index shows Pakistan having gone down 4 points, the perception of corruption as far as the government is concerned. What's behind it? What are your thoughts on that?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I'll agree with Dr. Saab on this, that this is an index of perception. So by its very virtue, it's a subjective measure, not an objective one. Now, the 2 points arise over here. Subjectively, the population at large, where they interface with the government, is all through departments which are administratively controlled by the provincial governments after the 18th Amendment, not the federal government. Be it your police service, be it your revenue service, be it your education or health departments. 90% of all public interaction with the government in any province of Pakistan is with the provincial governments, not the federal government. This is one major problem that Imran Khan's PTI's central leadership has had in delivering upon its vision. The other issue is that whatever mechanisms are available within the state of Pakistan are considerably autonomous and independent of the federal government itself. NAB, for example, the current chairman, Justice Javed Iqbal Saab, was appointed by the same political parties that are today crying victimization. He was not appointed by Imran Khan. He was not appointed by PTI. Most of the staff that is over there was not appointed by PTI. So, in fact, the federal government in Pakistan, under its constitutional framework today, has very little actual domain to take action as far as anti-corruption activity is concerned. Now, howsoever, what the federal government could have gotten about doing from the get-go was reform of institutions or a legislative framework, improving our prosecution services, improving the prosecution capacity within NAB, the investigation capacity within NAB. Unfortunately, none of that is being done. We do not see any significant increase in resources being allocated to them either. Now, a number of your guests today have argued that we've not had successful convictions coming out of the court. But for that, you require an element of judicial reform as well. And the criminal code may need to be reviewed as well. And I would like to draw the attention of the federal government to those issues. They need to be addressed if we are to get a grip on the
right. Let me come back to you. You're saying reform remains on the agenda, and there has been no move by the government to tackle that issue, which of course influences the rate of having the prosecution being weak. All of those issues with regard to anybody being proven guilty of corruption. Which may then affect perception. But let me go to Jawad Sahab. Jawad Sahab, can you answer anything that's been said as far as the perception of the government is concerned? Of course, one, there has been no move for reform. Two, as far as the opposition is concerned, this goes to vindicate them, this goes to prove the fact, according to them, that as far as they're concerned, as far as, with all this talk of corruption, actually, we're going down as far as tackling corruption is concerned.
There is no doubt about the perception, and then that perception translating into the Transparency International report that we have gone down. But at the same time, NAB recovering some good volume of recovery, and Public Accounts Committee and Anti-Corruption Punjab government, they have all recovered billions of rupees of corruption. And there has been...
but in your opinion, why hasn't that translated into, a positive perception for the people?
I think Transparency International report is, I think it goes through a number of processes. It is not just the perception. And perception, I would say in Pakistan, it's a constant battle. And where opposition will try to scandalize BRT, even if there is nothing in that. They will talk about Malam Jabba, even if they don't know anything about Malam Jabba scandal, but they will just talk about it.
But the criticism by the opposition is something that, of course, you also know that, always happens. And of course, PTI was also, quite a difficult critic, so to speak, when there was PMLN's government.
Yeah. So the top position, the Prime Minister, I would say we have seen some good decisions by Prime Minister when there was some hints about the corruption in Ministry of Health. The Minister was changed. When there was some hint about the corruption in KP Information Minister, that Information Minister was changed, and NAB was allowed to investigate even PTI leadership who were within government. If you also recall that...
Do you think it maybe shows that the rhetoric of the opposition as far as victimization is concerned, as far as failure of the prosecution that has resulted in, nothing been proven against them, whatever the reasons may be, it also goes to show that people are perhaps, angling towards that?
Maru, if you listen to the opposition leadership, whether it is Pakistan People's Party or Pakistan Muslim League Noon or even other parties like MQM, whenever there is a discussion about the corruption allegations on their leadership, the answer is that our leader faced the courts for 10 years, for 15 years, nothing proved against him.
Right.
Now,
because nothing does get proven.
Yeah. Now this tagline, this is so convincing for a common man, because when you say that nothing could be proved, and he came out, and so it was a victimization, it was a political victimization.
Why don't you move towards changing the system? Why don't you move towards reform, which is one of the main reasons why people came out to vote for this government, because they expected that change, they expected the moves towards that kind of reform, judicial reform, police reform, across the board change, which unfortunately, that hasn't happened till now.
I think the efforts are there. Just a week before, Forough Naseem, the law minister, he presented about the system, succession certificate, which has been introduced. I mean, reform processes, they are slow to introduce into a system which is rotten to the core, and you cannot just replace the whole system. Things will come, reforms will come slowly. So I think there are good things. I was giving you the example where Prime Minister had taken some tough decisions. Just take the example of Jahangir Khan Tareen. When he was disqualified from the Supreme Court, he left the party position also. On the other hand, if you look at PMLN or even People's Party, I mean, these things don't matter at all. So there is a zero tolerance as far as Prime Minister is concerned. But I think, in my opinion, corruption in Pakistan is not just about the top man. Corruption is about grassroots level, and it has the strength of the institutional strength, I would say, which is contributing towards the corruption, and it is protected by the institutions. And they are the cartels, they are the monopolies within the system which are protecting, and that is the reason that you take anybody with the corruption charges, whatever you have, you can run the cases for 10 years or 15 years, and for a common man, nothing has been proved against him.
Which goes again to the issue of reform.
Yeah.
Danish, what's your take on this?
I would just like to draw some distinction between what is my understanding and what this discussion has taken apart. My understanding is that, you know, despite or in spite of whatever has happened to you know, the ex-Prime Minister of Pakistan or the cases against them, this Transparency International report is independent of that. This is the perception of the public towards the public sector enterprises, you know, that what kind of, do they instill belief, or do they, you know, is there any kind of an element of trust that they repose in them or not, of the people, of the business people and experts. So this is the, I think this is not about what the cases, how much recovery has been made of the cases and, you know, what has happened to those cases. This is my understanding of how this report has been compiled. So what I'm trying to say is that, you know,
so what do you think it means as far as how does it translate into the kind of trends it poses for the government, you know, and their crackdown on corruption?
Well, if you look at the statement of the Prime Minister just a few days ago, he said that unfortunately Pakistan corruption has become the norm, and people have started to, you know, accept corruption as part of their society. And he said that, you know, besides the crackdown that the government wants to have on corruption, there is an active need by the society to, you know, negate the whole idea of corruption, to go back to those times when the society was corruption free, when they did not have to pay anything beyond the receipt amount to do a simple government job, or, you know, simple to deposit their fee or whatever. And he said that this is the need of the hour. Now, my, you know, this logic is very, you know, it is very logical, but my thinking is that, you know, people of Pakistan, or a very sizable majority of them, they believe that when they would vote, when they will get a government in power which has spoken about and spoken against corruption for the last 20-22 years, they would have done what their, you know, duty was, and then it would be upon the government to, you know, do their part and eradicate the corruption from the society. But now the people are being told that, look, our job is not, you know, we can't do our job like that. We need your cooperation. So the people are a bit, you know, they are a bit surprised and shocked that now, you know, this is being said that this is not something which the government can do.
You're saying that the government's passing the buck?
Yes, they are. I mean, they are. And
let me go to Barrister Hussain Ali Mirza ji. Barrister Sahab, do you think that that's true? Do you agree with what Danish Iftikhar Sahab is saying about the issue of corruption and the fact that perhaps you know, the expectation of the people was, you know, without getting into the nitty-gritties of it, very high as far as this government tackling corruption is concerned, and now that there are issues at this time, you know, about whether it's the federal government or whether it's the opposite, whether it's the provincial governments that are responsible for tackling the issue, you know, a host of other issues, a host of other reasons, whether it's the prosecution being weak, whether it's the issue of reform, it doesn't really matter to the people of Pakistan at this time.
Can you hear me? the expectation from PTI to eradicate corruption in Pakistan was much, much higher. You see, it is the only party that even considers corruption to be a taboo. Otherwise, the other parties that have cumulatively ruled us for the last 30 odd years, corruption is normalized within their structure, within their party structure. So, of course, the people of Pakistan voted for PTI because they were sick of that system and expected that it would stand up and deliver. For that, we needed maybe institutional reform, which has not yet been able to be delivered. But you see, again, within our current legal framework, what is the federal government to do? Now, if I give you the example of the government of Sindh, for example, where, as you understand, a plea bargain is an admission of guilt. Any officer, bureaucrat that goes through the plea bargain process admits that he was guilty of having committed corruption, and there are a number of orders of the court that those officers are to be removed from service. And yet we have seen news reports where there are hundreds of officers, namely the Secretary Finance, who is still on seat in the province of Sindh today, has been convicted and undergone a plea bargain process. He continues to sit and administer the finances of the second largest province of the country. How do you expect for the perception of corruption to go down when these are the stark realities on the ground?
But do you think, I will come back to you now, sir, do you think people appreciate these realities, which, you know, of course, there's no doubt about that on the ground there are these issues, whether you talk about issues with the Sindh government or the Punjab government versus the federal government and their responsibility, the issue of corruption now, you know, having gone right down to the grassroots level, all of those issues. Do you think that people are, you know, really bothered about the nitty-gritties, according to them, of it?
Well, first thing is about, you know, province versus federal. The thing is that, you know, it's not just the federal government which is under PTI. 3 of the provinces are with PTI or its allies. So we can't just say that, you know, it's just because the provinces and PTI doesn't have anything to do with it. The other thing is, you know, how much importance people really, you know, assign to corruption as an issue for them. And if you look at, you know, all these surveys done by Gallup and other Ipsos and so on, you know, the biggest issues that come out there is inflation. You know, 30-40% people say it's inflation, another 30-40% say it's unemployment, it's lack of, you know, government services. And, you know, a pretty small number of people, you know, less than 10%, in at least 4 or 5 surveys that I have seen, see corruption as a major problem for themselves. So that's where, you know, the narrative of the PTI has to fit in, you know, with the expectation of the people. PTI has just, you know, almost made it that the whole issue of governance is just about, you know, eradicating corruption, and that too of your opponents. So they have to take
right, exactly. It's about concentrating on the fact that, you know, there is corruption and there is accountability, and then, you know, there is accountability of the opposition, of political leaders, you know, which is glaringly in the face of the public at this time. And again, we come back to the point that nothing really happens because, you know, what vindicates the opposition is the fact that, look, we are facing the courts, but nothing's proven.
Yeah, the thing is, you know, even before the elections, you know, the clean image of PTI had taken such a big hit because, you know, it had to take so many electables in, you know, the same old people. If you look at the cabinet, more than half the people are from, you know, previous governments of PPP, PMLQ, PMLN. So, you know, there was a big hit then, and then, you know, the constant, you know, flood of, you know, smaller, you know, scandals, the foreign funding case. So it pretty much, you know, lost its image of being a very clean party, which is, you know, focusing on its own accountability as well. People are, you know, let go, they are removed from ministries when there's a scandal, and then they are quietly brought back into some other position. So, you know, by now, I think it's 2.5 years, and, you know, people, I think a lot of them, you know, who were sort of not hardcore PTI supporters, those are still into the same mold. But, you know, a lot of, you know, people who were not wedded fully to PTI but just wanted to give it a chance, feel now that it hasn't done anything on, you know, the front of corruption, and then also the bigger issue that it hasn't done much on, you know, the issue of governance, improving people's lives, bringing reforms and so on.
Ji,
So all that is
let's
really
hear from Jawad Sahab on that. Ji, Jawad Sahab. You think that there is that perception as far as people are concerned, you know, because, or do you think that it's about, you know, the PDM jalsas, the way that they've tried to, you know, put pressure on the government, and that narrative of being victimized, all of that? Then we've seen what happened with Broadsheet also, you know, throwing that also into now further, you know, a controversial, making it more controversial as far as the commission is concerned. How do you see that?
Maruk, now perception and what actually the society thinks about corruption. If we are just talking about the perception, so every scandal, you know, does reflect into the perception. For example, in our country, one of the top leadership of the political party is known as Mr. 10%. Now, this Mr. 10% has not been has not come out of any judicial system or any process or any court decision. It's about perception, and that perception sticks to the minds of the people, and you can't take it away. It is always there. At the same time, how does the society respond to the corruption? Now, it's a very big question. I just give you a very interesting reference from America. There has been a biggest fraud and corruption in the Wall Street history when Bernard Madoff he did a corruption of about $50 billion. You know, now look at the reaction of a system and a society, both. The system, the institutional system there was able to identify him, catch him, and he was given 150 years jail. Now, but this not enough. Then the society, look at the society, how the society has reacted to that. His wife never came back to see him in the jail. His one son committed suicide because he could not face the society for the corruption of his father. Another son, he suffered from cancer but never visited his father in the jail. And this Bernard Madoff is still in the jail, and this is how the societies react. So the perception is not just enough. The same society which contributes towards the perception of Mr. 10%, the same society is also ready to shake hand with the same person, would like to take pride to be affiliated with him or get close to him. So the perception is kind of, we want to paint a scenario. But what actually society today is that the corruption, they don't mind.
They don't mind.
They don't mind.
You think the people of this country don't mind?
People respect those who have got money, irrespective of the fact how they have gotten this money.
But Jawad,
in your street,
the people,
in your
people came out and voted for your government because they believed that the government would eliminate corruption.
Yeah.
That also is a reality, and I will come back to you, Barrister Danish Iftikhar. Let's move on. Let's talk about the move to legislate on Senate elections. How do you see that?
I think it's a very positive move, and I think it's a move which should have happened a long time ago, not at the eve of the Senate elections. Senate elections are just around the corner, and there is hardly...
Why do you think the government wants to do it now?
I think that the government probably wants to do it now. There is also, I think, an interest of the government in it, because for the first time, PTI would probably be able to gain a majority.
Right.
So PTI would not be wanting any person XYZ or any party, you know, to break the ranks or, you know, to go to the other, because there are people who indulge in horse trading. It is, you know, the unfortunate history of our
that, you know, in the past
Senate
we've seen
elections.
happen,
Yes.
right.
So I think one reason is that. The second reason, in my opinion, is also to, you know, to bridge the gap that has, you know, the gap that has come between the opposition, the PDM, and the government. Because over the last few months, as we have seen, there has been an agitation, a movement against the government, and resigning from the assemblies, and you know, this is what the PDM has been saying. So now the government has, you know, there's a trump card, so to say. The government has allowed. This is a non-controversial, you know, move. in the sense that everybody wants this to happen.
Right.
Every party wants this to
You're
happen.
saying that it's sort of an olive branch to get the opposition to perhaps, sit with them on the table.
And that will allow them to break that, that whole
Stalemate, yes.
stalemate, and also that, stampede, as some people were saying, it was coming towards Islamabad, the march and all that, and resigning from the assemblies. So this is a perfect opportunity for them
Do you think the government will succeed on this?
Well,
Because the fiery nature of the speeches, the disagreement on even the commission on broadsheet itself, that doesn't seem to have lessened in any way. There doesn't seem to be any softening, so to speak, from the opposition side. I will come back to you. Let me go to Dr. Niaz Mirza. Niaz Sahab, how do you see it? Do you think that it's an olive branch? As an olive branch, the opposition can perhaps buy it. They can sit with the government on this issue, and therefore other issues in the future. There can be some sort of a working relationship with the government and the opposition, instead of the kind of back and forth answering and the back and forth going as far as, I don't think I'd be wrong to say, bad mouthing, the slurring that has ensued, that has resulted, unfortunately, for the last more than a couple of months.
You're talking about the Senate open voting, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, in principle, I fully agree with it. Yeah, I think there should be open voting. People and the parties should know how, they
Right, of course, but do you think it will prove to be that kind of an issue where the government and the opposition can perhaps move towards a more friendlier relationship, for the lack of a better word?
Well, it's just the way that it is being brought up, there seems to be a bit of opportunism. First of all, PTI took it to the courts in the hope that, the court will, rule in its favor, and now that doesn't seem to be working. Some of the observations that their lordships have made, it doesn't seem that they're inclined to do that. So now they're backtracking and then, trying to bring it back to the parliament. This should have been done about a year ago, so that it would not have looked, because now the impression everybody is getting is that, PTI is worried that some of its people will not vote for it. And if the opposition smells that, what is, the incentive for them to try to, do something which will help the government immediately? So I think this should have been brought up at least a year ago when it wasn't a partisan issue. Then I think it would have been resolved much better.
It's certainly a very hasty move, considering the fact that it's right around the corner. We have the Senate elections. Do you think it's practical to undertake it so soon to the elections?
Yeah, I mean, it's just 1 month left now. You need to have proper, drafting, then discussion with, all different stakeholders, not just within the parties, within the press, with the public, and so on. So certainly, 1 month will be very, very short now, and try to rush it through.
But I want to go to Barrister Danish Iftikhar with a technical question before I go to Jawad Sahab. Barrister, do you think, we have all elections, if we go to the provision that deals with secret ballot in the Constitution, I forget the exact, the exact provision, but if I'm right, it reads that all elections to be, I'm not quoting, but all elections to be by secret ballot, apart from, I think, I don't know, 1 or 2. So if we refer to that provision in the Constitution, do you think that it's practical to change it with reference only to the Senate election, or will it apply across the board then? Because won't that undermine the process of fair and free elections then?
Well, if you go by what Dr. Babar Awan said earlier today, he said he was specifically talking about the Senate elections.
Okay.
And the specific provision, I think, was, I believe, 63I or something. And he said that the government will be proposing 3 reforms to the Constitution, and one of them would be the secret balloting issue.
Okay.
Well, as far as this thing is concerned, that whether it will be free and more transparent, I think that in this age of political party system, when political parties and they are gaining strength and they are being institutionalized after decades of military rule, I think that in this age and in this age and in this area, in this territory, in this sphere, the subcontinent, where politics are tainted with corruption, I think it's a good move. It will be a good move. It will be, rather than preventing openness and, as you said, that preventing or hampering the process of accountability or transparency. It will, I think, open the avenues for more transparency and more openness, and it will be good in the longer run.
But do you think the opposition will go for it? There is, according to them, if they smell, according to Niaz Murtaza Saab, if they actually feel that there is some, vulnerability the government feels as far as their members are concerned, they may decide not to go forward and support them at this time, or delay it. Let me go to Barrister Hasnain Ali Mirza ji. How do you see this?
On this issue, I do not see how anyone could argue that an open ballot, as far as the Senate is concerned, is not in the benefit of democracy in Pakistan.
Okay.
When we can elect our Prime Minister with an open division of the House, when we can elect our Chief Ministers with an open division of the House, then why not our Senators? We must trust our elected members of the House to make a decision in line with their political and ethical conscience. But why are the constituents not open to see what decisions they make? This is the same with all developed democracies, and I think we must move that way. It must be an open ballot, and be it through a division of the House or some other mechanism, but let it be an open vote. And
do you see the opposition siding with the government on it?
I'm sorry?
Do you see the opposition siding with the government on it? Do you see the opposition and government perhaps moving towards a better relationship pursuant to this, to this agreement on open ballot, for example?
In today's practical situation, I do not see any positive conclusion coming out of it, unfortunately. The opposition parties are relying on their significant financial resources to give them a disproportionate result in the upcoming Senate elections. It's very, very clear and evident. It has happened almost every time in Pakistan's electoral history. And we saw it happen in KPK the last time around, and PTI, Imran Khan, took a step of removing 20 of his sitting MPs at that time. Once again, we are hearing, at least in Sindh, rumors of shopping of elected members has already started. And unfortunately, even such rumors, if they continue to perpetuate, only do harm to democracy in our country, no benefit to it. I wish all our political parties can show that level of maturity, come together and support this very clear and positive step towards transparency.
Right, Jawad Saab, your comments on this. What does the government expect?
Maruf, I think there are three aspects to this subject. Number one, principally, how do we look at it? Principally, open voting is something about transparency, and especially keeping in view the past history of Senate elections, where Senate ticket is sold for 10 million or 20 million or 200 million. I mean, this is the kind of rate which you hear in the market about getting a Senate ticket. And in the past, we have seen people with a lot of money and even ill-gotten money, and they managed to get the Senate ticket from the political parties, and they managed to become senator. So this had become kind of a shortcut for anybody who has got a lot of wealth, and now he just wants to be recognized as a senator. He wants to sit in the Senate, he wants to sit in the walk in the power corridor. So here it is, 200 million rupees he pays, get the ticket and get into the senator, and now he is senator or former senator for the rest of his life. So I think from that perspective, in Pakistan, this door must be shut. This door must be closed. It is definitely not bringing any good to the Senate or to the democracy. Now this is the principal aspect. Now the second aspect which you asked was whether the timing is right or wrong.